Hey, what's going on guys? In this video we're gonna have a look at Facade Design Pattern. Before we start, if you're new to my channel, go ahead and subscribe. Also don't forget to smash a like button so I can eventually get more views. So what is the Facade Design Pattern? Basically this pattern helps to hide the complexities of the larger system and provide a simple interface to the client to interact with it. To understand the pattern better, let's look at the UML diagram. In the diagram we can see that the client doesn't access the subsystems directly. Instead it interacts with the facade class that communicates with the subsystems, so the client doesn't know anything about the complexity of the system as it only interacts with the facade class. Alright, so let's write our implementation as an example. So we're gonna build a simple user authentication. First of all, let's look at the subsystem classes. So the abstract class user has private fields, username and password, public getters and setters, and an abstract method to get user role, and it's the parent of the administrator and default user classes. The app database class implements the database interface and has an abstract method search. Now let's look at the authenticator class. This is our facade class that doesn't implement any functionality but simply delegates the request to the user and database instances that perform the request. Alright, let's go ahead and start it. I'm going to open up the IntelliJ. I have an empty project here. In this project I have a text file. It's going to be our database for the simplicity of the example. In this file we have two users, John and Jane. Now let's create the abstract class user. Let's add private fields, username and password. Now let's add our abstract method getUserRole. Now we're gonna create the public method getPasswordHashCode. That is gonna return a string. Let's create getters and setters. Now we're gonna create the default user class that extends the user class and implement the abstract method. Let's add the private field user role. Now we're gonna create an empty constructor. It takes three parameters: username, password, and user role. Let's set username and password. Let's also assign the user role value. In the getUserRole method we simply return the user role variable. Let's do the same for the administrator class that also extends the user class. Let's implement the abstract method. Let's also add the private field user role. Now we're going to create an empty constructor that takes the same three parameters: the username, password, and user role. Let's set username and password. And also assign the user role value. In the getUserRole method we also return the user role variable. Now we're going to create the database interface. Let's add the search method. Now let's create the app database class and implement the interface. Let's create the list where we're going to store our users. Now let's create an empty constructor. It's going to take one parameter, file name. Let's read the text file using Java 8 approach. In the try block, let's write stream, files, lines, path get, and let's pass our file name. In the catch block, we're gonna catch IO exception, and if something goes wrong, we're gonna print the error message. Now let's create a list of users from our stream for each user. First, let's split each string into an array. Now let's check if the user role is administrator. If so, then let's create an instance of the administrator class and add it to the array list. Otherwise, let's create an instance of the default user class and also add it to the array list. Now let's move to the search method. In this method, we're going to check if we have a user in our database. For that, we're going to filter the users list and check if we have a user with a username that we pass to the method. And return any element that is matched our criteria, or else we're going to return null. Let's create our facade class now and call it Authenticator. It's going to have one public method called Authenticate according to our UML class diagram. It takes two parameters, username and password. Let's create an instance of the database class. Let's pass our file name to the constructor. Now let's check if we have a user with the username that we pass to the method. If we have such a user, then let's check if the password hashcode matches the password hashcode from the database. If so, let's print welcome back. Plus the username. Let's capitalize the first letter. For that, we're gonna use the substring method. Let's also add exclamation mark. Let's also print you're logged in as a plus user role. Otherwise, we're gonna say wrong password, try again. And if there is no such a user, let's say this user doesn't exist. Now let's move to our main class. Let's remove the comment and create an instance of the scanner class so we can read the user input. Now let's print login, then username, and save the user input to a variable. Let's call it username. Now let's do the same for the password. Let's copy this line and change username to password. And also save the user input to a variable. Now let's create an instance of our Authenticator class. Let's call the method authenticate and pass the username and password. Let's run it. Let's type John, password QWERTY1234, enter, and we see welcome back John. You're logged in as a default user. So that's it guys, that's all about the facade design pattern. Pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and being here with me again. I will see you in the next video.